if you're, if you don't want your face on the video, then by all means, just keep your camera off. I do ask that you keep your cameras off and your mics on mute for the duration of the webinar. All questions will be taken at the end of the webinar today. So if you do have a question, please go ahead and put it in the chat. And if you can preface it with a capital Q so that we know that it's a question, that would be great. We have Jaden, our fabulous career services officer, moderating the chat. So please do put any questions you might have in there. And I think we're just going to go ahead and get started. So here, I just wanted to give a territorial acknowledgement. We at Kwantlen Polytechnic University respectfully acknowledge that we live, work, and study in a region that overlaps with the unceded traditional and ancestral First Nations territories of the Musqueam, Katzie, Semiahmoo, Tsawwassen, Kikite, and Coquitlam, and with the lands of the Kwantlen First Nation, which gifted its name to this university. In the cause of reconciliation, we recognize our commitment to address and reduce ongoing systemic colonialism, oppression, and racism that Indigenous peoples continue to experience. Now, I am Chantal. I am a KPU career coach, and I'm really honored to be here with you today to deliver the first in our webinar series leading up to Career Day 2025. For those of you that don't know, this webinar and Career Day is brought to you by the Career Development Center. Career Development Center is made up of career services, volunteer services, cooperative education, guessing a lot of you know about that one, and employer relations. And you can also visit our social media channels, and please do give us a follow. Hit that follow button. You can visit us online with the QR code there to find out about all the really great services that we offer to KPU students and alumni. So as I mentioned, this is the first in our webinar series leading up to the Career Day event, a really exciting event that's happening. So right now you're in the resume and cover letters, putting your professional foot forward webinar. And then tomorrow, please do join us. If you haven't registered for this one, you probably want to. So this is the Career Insights, Exploring Careers Beyond the Courtroom and Law Enforcement. So whether you're in criminology or accounting, business, IT, whatever, you're probably going to want to come and sit in for this career panel, and that's happening tomorrow. That one's a little bit longer, from 12 till 1:30 p.m. So make sure that you register on Career Connection for that one. And then on Thursday, we have Navigating Career Day and Building Connections. So some really important tips and tricks on how to be strategic when you go to Career Day 2025, but really any career fair. So I really do encourage you to register and attend that one, happening this Thursday. Next week, we're going to kick things off with Interviewing Your Way to a Job Offer. That's happening on Monday, March 10th from 12 to 1. And that, of course, leads us all to Career Day. Career Day is happening on Tuesday, March 11th on the Richmond campus, and on Wednesday, March 12th at the Surrey campus. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for that. Now, here's what you're here for. You're here to learn about resumes and cover letters. My goal today is that you will understand the importance of customizing resumes each and every time, gain clarity between tasks and skills. I see a lot of resumes, and I see typically they're inundated with a lot of tasks, but they don't really necessarily highlight the key skills, and you have so many. So really about shifting that from task to skill. So we're going to cover that. Learning the importance of cover letters and how to write a personalized one. I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, and I just can't believe how many people are saying that they believe cover letters are dead. If you speak to recruiters, that's actually not the case. So it's a pretty important piece of the application process, and it's a really, really great way to increase your chances of getting that interview. So of course we have to talk about it. I really want to make sure that you increase your confidence in developing a strong application. And all of this is in preparation for Career Day. So the goal is to get your Career Day ready. I could just make sure that each of you have your mics on mute. That would be great. All right, so this is what we're going to be covering. The first part of the webinar, the big bulk of the webinar really is dedicated to resume. So do I really need to include that on my resume? Oftentimes I see resumes that get submitted for review, and there's way too much information on there, way more than what the recruiter typically needs to see. We'll talk about, I'm not going to break apart each section of the resume, but I will be spending a bit of time on the skills summary or the profile section. That's that section up there at the top of the resume. This is career day. So this is to prepare you for a professional application. It's a little bit different than Get Ready, Get Hired, the other hiring fair that we host earlier in the beginning of the fall semester. This one is a little bit more geared towards that professional application. And so I do put a bit of time discussing the importance of a profile section. Skills over tasks. So I'm gonna talk about that as well. It's really about promoting your skills, not the individual tasks that you are required to complete in your job or volunteer role. So we'll talk about that. Of course, how to build that bridge. So customizing that resume each and every time for a different reader. And then we'll wrap resumes off, wrap it up with visual presentation tips. So I'll just kind of walk you through some important tips on how to make sure your resume looks pretty, because they have to want to read it, right? And then we're going to shift over to cover letters. So we're going to talk about the structure of a cover letter, the importance of that introduction hook, so that opening paragraph, and how to really grab their attention and encourage them to read on. The 80-20 rule. So I'll talk about that a little bit when I talk about ChatGPT. Yeah, I'm going to talk about ChatGPT and the importance of applying that human touch. And that's where the 80-20 rule comes in. And then we're going to open up the floor to any questions. So again, if you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat. And if you can just preface it with a Q, that would be great. And we'll get to those questions at the end of the webinar. And Jaden, our Career Services Officer, will help us out with that. Okay, so is it really necessary? One thing I always say when I'm meeting with students or alumni about their resume and how to make sure that they're really customizing it and giving a professional look is, I always say to them, everything that's on your resume should be truth, but not everything should be on your resume. And so I know that sometimes you're particularly proud of an accomplishment or of an achievement. But if your resume can more or less, or if your work experience is is even somewhat relevant, you really do want to focus on that more so than those achievements perhaps from high school and so forth. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. Now, when it comes to personal details, you don't want to, I do see resumes that include passport numbers, marital status, age, things like that, even which high school stream some students went through. That kind of information is not necessary. In fact, in many cases, the employer shouldn't know that kind of information about you, marital status and so forth. Your high school. So now that you're at KPU and you're in a degree or diploma program, you actually don't need to put your high school education on your resume. So you could choose to remove that. It's a bit of an option, but for a professional kind of look, we're really transitioning. The goal with Career Day is transition from student to professional. And so it might be a good idea to, one of the first things you do in your professional resume is to remove your high school and to really only focus on the post-secondary training that you have. Going too detailed into the tasks, the daily tasks that you were responsible for in your work experience or volunteer experience, probably not necessary. You really want to focus more so on skills than on tasks, and we will talk about that. Now, other education, in some cases, some people might be doing a complete career shift. And so you might have, a certificate or a diploma in a completely different program. It's not necessary to include that. You don't have to tell them everything unless you can see how that would be relevant to the reader. So the question is this relevant to that particular role? If the answer is no, you can probably take that off, right? And in fact, if you have quite a few diplomas and certificates that showed kind of a varied background, you might want to actually remove some of those so that the employer gets the impression that you're really serious about the type of career you're pursuing now. Okay, so question for you. How long does a recruiter typically take to initially review a resume? Okay, so give it some thought. So you submit your application, the recruiter opens up their applicant tracking system or their email or whatever, and they're going through the list of resumes and they're going through each one of them. How long would you say on average? Go ahead and drop your answer in the chat there, either by time or by letter. Is it 30 seconds that they would take to initially review a resume? Is it 15 seconds? Would it be 6 seconds, or would you say it's just over a minute? So I'll give it a few seconds here. Go ahead and write what you think in the chat. And then when we start to see some answers coming in, Jaden, I'll ask you to read out what you're seeing in the chat.
Yeah, it's looking like we have a good mix here. The majority of people, it looks like, think it takes 30 seconds for someone to review a resume.
Okay, so would you say that, so that's the majority of the answers that are coming in,
Majority
30 seconds?
30 seconds, and second would be just over a minute.
Okay, so 30 seconds or just over a minute. Okay, I could see how one would think that. But believe it or not, the answer is actually C. It's 6 seconds. So if you think about it, a recruiter really knows what they're looking for. They need to receive that or ingest that information pretty quickly, because depending on the actual position, they can get anywhere from 10 applications up to beyond 100. And so they really need to use their time strategically. They know what they're looking for when they begin scanning the resume. So the key here is typically take to initially review a resume. So the initial scan takes about 6 seconds. And from there, they'll determine if they want to put it into another pile where they will come back and review it in a little bit more detail and perhaps take anywhere between 30 seconds to just over a minute. So sounds like you might all be surprised to see that, but typically it's about 6 seconds. So within those 6 seconds, you have to make those seconds count. And a really great way to do that is with a skills summary or a profile. So the skill summary or profile is up there at the top of the resume, and it immediately follows your header. So your header is where your name, your phone number, your email, your city, and maybe your LinkedIn URL are situated. So just below that, you would have the first and what I think is one of the most important sections on a resume, the skill summary or the profile. Now, what it does is it introduces the reader to your resume early on. So they're going to be spending a good number of those seconds scanning that profile for what it is they need. It is a summary of your abilities as it is directly related to that position. So that profile or skill summary really has to be customized to the actual position itself. And to do that, we're going to want to take a look at the qualifications section of your standard job posting, the one that you're targeting, and adjust the content of your skill summary or your profile to reflect the skills you have there. Are you going to have every skill and requirement that's on the job posting? Absolutely not. It's very unlikely that you will. But you could have anywhere between 60% and up of that. And if you do, then those are the ones that you want to focus on. So really focus on the abilities that you do have as they relate directly to the position. You want to make sure that that profile is a good mix of hard and soft skills. Now, in some cases, some people might like a short paragraph, and other people might choose to have a bulleted list of their most relevant abilities, skills, education summary, and so forth. I have a preference for a short paragraph. I think that this is a nice way to start off a professional looking resume. And then you can follow up just below that with maybe those key specific skills. In this case, it would be perhaps a type of software. I consider this kind of like the mini resume. What I mean by that is everything that they see in that summary can be supported throughout the actual document. So if you're telling me that you are a health sciences student, for example, I don't need to know in the profile where you're a student. I can see under the education section, yeah, sure enough, they are in fact a health sciences student, and I can see that they're at KPU right now. So it's really just about giving them yummy little tidbits about you to encourage them to read on. Speaking of skills versus tasks. So the one thing you want to do with your resume is you really want to highlight for the recruiter or the hiring manager that you have the skills necessary in order to do the job that they are hiring for. So if I take, for example, a customer service position, now if you tell a recruiter that you operate a cash register and that you stock shelves, those are tasks. What you want to do instead is really focus on the skills that you've developed and enhanced while you were in that particular position. I will give you some examples, so stick with me here. So what we want to do is we want to identify the task that you are responsible for in the new job. What kind of skills would you need in order to do those tasks? And then you want to address that on your resume, right? So if you think about a standard job posting, standard job postings have 3 sections. They have the information about the company. So this is who we are. This is the hiring company. You're going to want to talk about that on the cover letter, typically. The next section of a standard job posting would be the responsibilities. So in this role, you would be required to do this, this, and this. And it's typically maybe in short paragraph or maybe in bulleted format. That's the area that I want you to focus on when you're trying to figure out what skills you need to highlight on your resume. Well, identify the skills that would be needed to achieve those tasks that they list on the job posting. Look at each of the tasks, each of the responsibilities, and identify the top key skills that would be required to do that. Go back to your resume, and in the way you describe what you did or what you do in your previous work experience or volunteer experience, make sure that you're focusing more on the skills, not the individual tasks. The third section of a standard job posting would be the qualifications, right? So we're looking for someone who has Bachelor of Science in this, or a Bachelor of Arts, or 2+ years experience, software development, whatever it might be. That, we've already addressed that. That should be addressed early on in the profile. That's where you're letting them know, hey, listen, I'm qualified based on my profile. Now read on about me, right? So that's what that profile section is for. Let's take a look at how we can take tasks, identify the key skills that we use while completing those tasks, and then how we can turn those into accomplishment sentences. So let's have a look at this. So let's say your tasks would be to, maybe you work for orientation here at KPU, so it's to give tours and provide information. Well, I've seen plenty of resumes that might describe orientation leader as, giving tours to prospective students or new students, or provide information about KPU services. But what we're looking for are 3 elements to each of your bullets. So the way you describe what you did or what you do in your previous work or volunteer positions, you want to make sure each of those bullets contains 3 elements. The first element is a power word. It's just a verb, really. So a verb. The middle part, so the second part of that bullet, the details. And then the third or final part, the result, the impact of what it is you did. So guided, there's your verb, informative campus tours for up to 500 prospective students, with surveys indicating the presentation positively impacted their choice. So now we've taken tasks, give tours, provide information, and we've converted it to skills. And we are now demonstrating that we we bring enthusiasm, presentation skills, confidence, and good communication skills to any job. Not just this job, but if you brought those skills to this job as an orientation leader, then chances are you can bring those similar jobs to skills rather to a different job. Let's look at a different one. So your tasks as a cashier would be cash handling, serving customers, and stocking. And again, I see quite a few resumes where they simply write in those bullets when they describe what they did or do as a cashier that they handle cash, they serve customers, and they restock shelves. Let's turn this around. Let's make sure that it contains those three elements. Confidently processed, so I started with an adverb, confidently, processed, average of 80 to 100 customer service transactions daily while ensuring stocks were replenished and area kept clean. Now, your skills that you're demonstrating in this example, you work well under pressure, you can multitask, you're confident, and you can provide great customer and client service. So the goal of a professional resume is not to list tasks, but rather to prove skills, to show them and to demonstrate to them the skills that you acquired and used in your previous positions. And each bullet should contain those three elements. The power word, describe what you did, what was the value created, or how did you even do that? So sometimes I do see that part of the bullet is there. The power word is there. They typically start with a verb, which is great. They have some description of what it is they did, but then it ends there. So it kind of falls a bit short. So sometimes I say to the student or alumni, I'm like, hey, listen, how did you do that? Or why did you do that? To improve this, or to enhance that, or to decrease cost. So just wrap it up with that final bit. So sometimes answering the how or the why, did you do that first part, will turn it into a complete accomplishment sentence. All right. The goal of your resume really is to build a bridge, right? So you have on one side of the bridge, you have your job characteristics. On the other side of the bridge, you have the job characteristics. On the other side, you have your experience or your skills. Your resume's job is to connect the two. It's to connect the two for the reader. To do that, you need to understand what their needs are. So through the job posting, but hopefully beyond that, through the research that you've conducted, maybe by having great conversations at Career Day, by telling them what's relevant. So again, keeping that less relevant information off the page so that they don't have a choice but to focus on what's most relevant. And in fact, you don't have a choice but to focus on what's most relevant when you're putting together your resume. And to make the match. One size does not fit all. So in some cases, you might want to focus more on the teamwork skills that you developed in your previous position. But depending on this job that you're applying for, you might want to focus on your your ability to work independently. So it really just depends on the actual position. So the resume's job is to build that bridge between the job's characteristics and your experience and skills. Next up, we have visual presentation. So like I said before, we need to make it pretty. We need to make them want to read the resume. And if we're handing in a resume that has no white space and just a whole bunch of writing or black writing over multiple pages, chances are you're going to lose your audience and you're going to lose them quickly. So you really do want to make sure that you have a healthy balance of black writing to white paper. So a few things that we're going to talk about in the next few slides. Using the rule of thirds when you're putting your resume together. I'm going to break that down. Ensuring that you are consistent with your font size and style throughout the document and placement of information. Make sure that your length is not too short and not too long. So typically it's longer than it should be. And so we'll talk about length a little bit. Wherever possible, I would recommend quantifying on your resume. So, inserting inserting numbers and percentages and dollar signs wherever you can. Quantifying proves what it is you're telling them to be truth. Making sure that you save it as a professional file name. I often will get resumes submitted to me, and fair enough, just saved as resume. So making sure that you have a clear file name that clearly indicates what the content of that particular file is. So we'll cover that. And finally, make sure that you get it reviewed. So get another set of eyes to check out that resume. As you know, from all the paper writing you do and you're going to continue doing, after a while, if there's an error or a few errors on the page, you'll continue to glance over them and you won't even notice them when you're so used to, to working on that document. It's easy to miss those mistakes. So the rule of thirds, pretty simple stuff. So the top third, so you want to kind of look at your resume as, being broken into 3 key sections. So the top third, that's where you're going to place the most relevant information, including your qualifications, your skills summary section. So of course, that's going to contain your name, your phone number, email, all of that, and then the profile. The middle third, that's the content that proves what you wrote in your summary or in your profile section. So if you state that you have collaborative skills that you developed through work and volunteer experience, I'm going to expect to see that proven when you tell me about your work and volunteer experience. The bottom third is a combination of less relevant and or interesting information. So, still important. Perhaps it's your interest section or some older work or volunteer experience. So you might even label that as other work experience. Maybe it's a little older, but you still think that it's relevant. Speaking of interest, when it comes to interests, if you do decide to put your interests on your resume, and absolutely, I would encourage you to do that. Rather than just listing that you enjoy traveling or that you enjoy reading or cooking or some kind of sport, expand on that a little bit. So if you enjoy reading, expand on it a little bit and let them know what kind of reading you enjoy doing. What perhaps is one of your favorite novels that you've read. If you enjoy traveling, indicate some of the places that you've been. So just expand on that a little bit and give yourself a little bit more of a human touch, I guess you could say, to that section. So here's where I talk about font size and consistency. And so I've used the work experience section and the education section as 2 examples. You'll notice that it's all consistent. Work history is all bolded. The headings rather are bolded in all caps. So work history looks the same as the education heading. Then under work history, we have from left to right. The information that's on the left-hand side is typically more important than the information that's on the right-hand side. So on the left-hand side, we start it with the job title and it's bolded. Looking over at the education, that's where we insert the program title and it's bolded. Then we have the company name and the date over on the right-hand side. And then beside the program title, we have the school name and then the date on the right-hand side. So if we're considering a recruiter and the amount of time that they take to initially review a resume, we want to make sure that everything is in its place and is predictable. So, work history, the job title's there, program title replaces the location of the job title under the education section. Use one font style throughout. Whether it's Calibri or Times New Roman, use the exact same font throughout the entire document. In my opinion, I do find that Times New Roman to be a little bit dated, but if you do like that, the serif fonts, so those are the fonts that have the little sticks on the end of them, like Cambria is another one, then I would recommend maybe a Cambria or something like that. Gives it a little bit more of a modern look. My favorite one is a Calibri, size 11. That's my go-to font style and size for an entire resume, with the headings being all caps and bolded with maybe a size or 2 above. So just making sure that that is consistent throughout so that you are almost spoon feeding the recruiter that information and making it nice and easy for them to take in all that really great information that you're giving them. Can I just remind everyone to please make sure you are on mute? That would be really great. All right, so looking at resume length. So resume length, it differs. Absolutely, it differs across countries. But typically in Canada, we're between 1 to 2 pages. Now, for a student, I would say 1 page is sufficient. But of course, at KPU, we have a lot of students coming that have a really strong professional background. So it might be the case that you have more than 1 page, and that's completely okay. The question that I have for you is the information that you've provided on that resume relevant to the reader? So in some cases, you might give a 1 page resume, and in other cases, you might give 1 to 2 pages. Typically speaking, 2 pages is maximum. But I say typically speaking because it really, I hate to say this, but it really just depends. For the most part, you do want to stick between 1 to 2 pages. But you can see in other parts of the world, it's pretty standard to give way more than 1 to 2 pages. I would say Australia is one of the longest ones. I used to work at a youth site downtown, at a youth employment center downtown, and we had a lot of people visiting from Australia, and they would ask us to review their resume and give us a hard copy, and I felt like they were giving me a book to edit. So in some cases, it's pretty common to go more than 1 to 2 pages. But typically speaking, I think for most students, 1 page is sufficient. Remember, if you have any questions, please make sure to drop those in the chat and preface it with a large Q or capital Q, and we will get to those questions at the end of the webinar. Quantifying for impact. So numbers really do stand out in a sea of letters, and it when you insert those into your information, it almost makes it seem more authentic, right? It's like you're proving what it is you're saying. Now I have an example here going back to an accomplishment statement, so a bullet, and I've quantified it. So as an example here for those accomplishment statements, I like to use I told you there's the 3 components that each bullet should have. So think of it as an XYZ method, right? So an active and relevant verb is your X, the details, the Y, and resulting in would be Z, or the impact or how you did it or why you did it would be the Z. So let's look at one where we've quantified it. So you can see right away when you look at this bullet that those numbers and the percentage symbols really do stand out. So as a sales associate at ABC Clothing, and you can see that everything is nice and neatly kind of organized and placed. Every bit of detail has its place. The bullet. So surpassed monthly sales targets by 20% through knowledgeable and personalized customer service, leading to a 15% increase in store loyalty program signups. All right. Now, I have to say that it's pretty clear that I've had students take my suggestions and apply, quantifiable information into their bullets, but sometimes you can tell it's not necessarily authentic information. And so I really do want to highly encourage you to use authentic and truth when you're putting together your quantified bullets. So file name. So when you submit your application, the recruiter can often see the name of the file that you submitted the application in. So it's particularly important that you let them know what is inside that particular file. You want to, and the other thing to consider is that they're, and many times, hiring for more than one position. So it's really handy for them to see the particular position that you're applying for right there in the file name. So you would start off with your first and last name, an underscore, the job title, and then the document type at the end. So Chantal Rackley, career coach, resume. This is all part of a professional presentation. So how your resume looks is particularly important. How it reads, of course, is very important, but also that file name. All of that sends a message to the recruiter, right? That you know how to put your professional foot forward. So the file name really does matter. So here I put together kind of your standard resume. In this case, we put the education before the work experience. And again, it really just depends what's more important and what's more relevant to the reader. In some cases, you might choose to have your work experience first, And in other cases, you might choose to have your education first. So that's customizing your resume for each application depending on the reader. So you can see here I've started with my summary, which we saw earlier in the presentation. So we have a header up at the top. I put a red arrow there because I did want to remind everyone that you do not necessarily have to use your legal name on your resume. If you have a preferred name that you prefer to use, feel free to use that name. You can have that up there. Just make sure that the rest of your correspondence also matches that name that you put on your resume and your cover letter. So I did just want to remind everyone of that. Now, of course, once you're hired and you have those legal forms, the tax forms and so forth that you need to complete, you do need to actually use your legal name on those legal documents. But for your resume, you can certainly just put your preferred name there. So I went ahead, I put the job title up there at the top, and my summary reflects the job title that I put there at the top. And I have education. You'll see that everything is in order in the education to reflect the same order under work experience. So we have the program title, then under experience, we have the job title. The date is over to the right. Everything is easy to ingest. It's easy to take in once I'm scanning it relatively quickly. Those other three red arrows reflect pretty typical tasks that we might see on someone's resume. So instead of those tasks, you're a camp leader, watch children at summer camp and work with a team of other camp leaders, use the XYZ method, and wherever possible, quantify. So plan in and out trip programs for up to 20 campers within framework of age ability of campers to challenge potential barriers and heighten self-esteem. Under chemistry tutor, yeah, you tutor children in chemistry. That makes sense. It's right there in the title. So you don't need to even list that as a task. Rather, tell us how you do it. So delivered engaging, thought-provoking sessions to groups of up to 6, grade 8 and 9 students with successful learning outcomes indicated through before and after surveys. All right, so let's have a quick recap before we head over to cover letters. So we want to make sure that we let them know what they need to know and that they can identify that in the first 6 seconds of scanning that document. Use a summary to pull them in. That's part of that first point, right? Making sure that you tell them within the first 6 seconds what they need to know, and it's nicely summarized up there at the top in a summary or profile. Promote the skills that you have that are relevant to the job that you're targeting and not the tasks of the job that you are paid to do. Build a bridge. So build that connection between what they need and what you have. Make sure that your document is consistent in terms of font size and style. One font throughout the entire document is best, and then it's easy to ingest that information. That's formatting for clarity and readability. So easy to read bullet points, bite-sized pieces kind of throughout the document. Quantify wherever you can to show impact. Make sure that you save as each time, so you have different, of course, file names depending on the job that you've applied for. Use your preferred name, and of course, get it reviewed. So I just put the QR code up there for the resume review service. That is a busy service. We have caught up though. So please do feel free to submit your resume and or cover letter for review there, and we'll provide you with some feedback and get that back to you. Okay, so cover letter tips. Send one. If I'm going to end there, that's where I would end. Send a cover letter. And wherever possible, address it to an actual human being. Recruiters, hiring managers, human resources, they are human beings with names. And so if you can identify their name, perhaps by calling and asking who you should properly address your cover letter to, I would absolutely recommend you do that. If you can't, Dear Hiring Manager works well as well. Make sure that you format, just like the resume, you want to format it for readability. So really long paragraphs beyond a page, chances are they're not necessarily going to want to read that. So think about readability. Just like the resume, you want to connect yourself to the company, but avoid repeating the resume because chances are they've actually started with the resume and now they're going to head over to the cover letter to find out a little bit more about you. So you've shown them with your resume that you're qualified for the position. And maybe other applicants have also done that. So now they need to try to determine how they're going to shortlist for interviews. In that case, they might hop over to the cover letter to get a better idea of who you are. So send one. Among companies who don't require applicants to submit a cover letter, 73% said that they still read it. So if a cover letter is submitted, even though it was optional, 73% said they still read it. That's important information to know. So write your resume as though it's going to be read. 83% of hiring managers reported that cover letters are important in their hiring decisions. That's huge. 83% of hiring managers report that cover letters are important in their hiring decision. So if you're on the fence, should I not write a cover letter? It doesn't say that I need to submit one. I strongly recommend that you write that cover letter and feel free to submit it to Resume Review for some feedback. I can't kind of stress this enough. They are human beings, human resources, hiring managers, and so forth. So if you can get a name and address it to them, I would strongly recommend that you do that. You can, again, try calling the company. You don't need to go into too much information. Hi there, my name is Chantal, and I'm excited for this position. I saw it posted on. You don't have to go into that. Hi there, I'm applying for the career coach position that I noticed on your website. Can you tell me who I should properly address the cover letter to? At most, they'll say, like at most in terms of negative, they'll say, nope, we're not providing that information. No problem. Would it be the hiring manager that's going to be reviewing it, or is it human resources? They'll very likely tell you at least that, but they might actually give you a name. And if they give you a name, see if you can just confirm that the pronouns she, her, or him, he, him, they, them, whatever, so that you can properly greet them in the initial, dear Ms. Singh, dear. And if you don't know the pronouns, then go with their full name. All right, so next up, we're going to have a look. We're going to break it down. We're going to have a look at what an actual cover letter might look like and what we want in terms of readability. So the first thing that we'll notice here is the first name and last name. So you do want to ensure that you have the exact same header on your cover letter as you have on your resume. And so if you're using a preferred name, make sure that that preferred name is also on your cover letter. So make sure that the message is consistent. So first name, last name, city, comma, BC, phone number, email, and your LinkedIn URL. Then we have the date that you are sending the cover letter, and then the employer's full information if possible. So their address and so forth. Dear Mr., Ms., the employer's last name, if the pronouns are known. If not, then using the person's full name. If you don't know the person's full name, dear recruiter, dear human resources, dear hiring manager. Paragraph 1. Now you can see here that I have a standard kind of 3-paragraph cover letter. 3 to 4 paragraphs is typically sufficient. So in paragraph 1, that's where they're going to decide more or less if they want to continue reading this document. So you got to hook them. You got to hook them in. So you want to start strong and try to avoid standard openings like, I'm excited to apply for this position as posted on Indeed. Consider the position. Consider what they're looking for. And adjust your opening to really reflect that. So here's an example. As someone deeply committed to empowering youth, I look forward to bringing a combination of education and experience to the, youth advisor role with ABC Corporation. If you want to include where you found the position and you found it on Indeed, might I strongly suggest that you first go and look to see if it's actually posted on their website, on the corporate website or on the company website. And if it is, that's where you saw it. That's where you found it. Don't let them know that you found it on Indeed, because what you're doing is you're instantly telling them sending them the message that you're looking for any job, and that's why you're spending your time on Indeed. But when you tell them that you found the job posting or found out from about the job through their company website, or maybe through someone who works there, even better, right? So that's sending a message early on. Paragraph 2, you want to review the role responsibilities. Now, you're not repeating. ChatGPT does this a lot, and I see it so much when I get cover letters submitted through the resume account, where they basically repeat step by step what they did in each of their jobs. And so I encourage you to go beyond that. And so what I would recommend here is connecting the dots for them, right? So letting them know how the experience and skills that you have might be used in this position. So to solve a problem, to decrease customer wait times, to increase sales, whatever it might be. So don't simply repeat what was on the resume, because as I mentioned before, it's very likely they started with the resume and now they're hopping over to the cover letter to get a better understanding of who you are. So don't repeat the resume because they already know that information, right? Paragraph 3, you're going to close it out. You're going to reiterate your interest in the position and request an interview or request a meeting, right? As much as possible, you want to avoid your company, your organization. Always insert the name of the company or organization throughout the document. That also sends a message that you're writing them, only them this cover letter. You only have eyes for them, and that's the message that you want to send. So of 625 recruiters surveyed, and the question was, why do you read cover letters? Now, this is important information for you to know because it does help you to adjust the content of your cover letter. So why do they even hop over to the cover letter? Well, to provide additional information and context as to why you're applying for that position, to show your personality. Okay, so resumes don't really do that. The cover letters do. To give applicants who don't meet many requirements a chance to pitch their qualifications. Now that's key, right? Because a lot of you just starting out, perhaps you're entering into your final year at KPU, or perhaps you've recently graduated. Chances are you don't have a ton of work experience under your belt. So you want to convince them, why they should take the chance and interview you, and to check the applicant's communication skills. So that's important to know as well. Now, I can't have a webinar on resumes and cover letters without talking about ChatGPT. So I decided to add in a few prompts here that I would recommend that you use, something similar to this. So you could plug in, use the resume I just provided to assist you as a career expert. So you're referring to ChatGPT as a career expert. Describe why the skills I have developed through my work experience and training would be a great match for this job description I posted below. Avoid repeating directly from my resume, because I see that all the time, and keep your response within about 100 words. Use long, short, long, short, short, long, long sentence length. Okay, ChatGPT tends to spit out some pretty predictable content, so you can adjust how you provide those prompts. Here's another one. Here's my resume. Then you would paste it. Using my work, volunteer, and education, describe how I'll be able to transition well into the job from this job posting. Post the job posting, write it in an authentic voice and within 100 words. From there, you would then type this, using your generated response, focus more or less on this. All AI generated content must be edited for human touch. It is becoming very easy to see when someone used ChatGPT to write their cover letter. This is the 80-20 rule I was talking about. 20% of your time is spent generating a cover letter, perhaps from ChatGPT, or even writing the cover letter. 80% of your time should be dedicated to editing that content, giving it the human touch. Okay, never, ever please rely solely on ChatGPT. Don't put them to sleep. 49% of hiring managers express that a strong cover letter can convince them to interview an otherwise weak candidate. That's huge. 49% of hiring managers express that a strong cover letter can convince them to interview an otherwise weak candidate. If that statistic alone isn't enough to encourage you to write a well-written cover letter, I don't know what it is. All right, so summarizing. So I've already said this, send one, right? Make sure to send it where you can, address it to a specific person. Make sure it's in a nice clean format, kind of a boxed format with short paragraphs where each word matters. Connect yourself to the company, so build that bridge, and do not repeat rather the resume, because chances are they read it. For those of you that don't know, we do have a resume and cover letter toolkit on Career Connection in the resource library. So the QR code is here. I'm going to come back to that, but I just wanted to let you know that it is there, and that will take you to Career Connection. So, you can log in and download that PDF. I want to leave you with this important thing to remember is that your resume and cover letter won't always work until they do. So it's really a matter of editing, adjusting, refocusing, re-strategizing, because it will work for you. And sometimes it's frustrating, but that's what we're here for. So make an appointment with a career coach, submit your application to the resume review service, and get another set of eyes to check it out. Okay, so hopefully everyone who started here stayed here, because you need to stay till the very end in order to have your name put in for our webinar prizes. So we have webinar prizes, and then we also have door prizes for the day of the actual event for Career Day. So for each webinar you attend and stay till the end, your name will get put into a draw where you could win a $20 KPU bookstore gift card. That could buy a lot of Mr. Noodles. So there you go. And then the day of the event, Career Day, we have a stamp card contest, and you'll learn all about it when you actually go to Career Day. You'll be given a stamp card rather, and you need to get your card stamped by employers. So each employer you speak to, you get a stamp. For every 5 stamps, you get 1 entry into the draw. And I think there's a maximum of 6 entries. And you could win a KPU bookstore gift card valued at $50 or a $100 Guilford gift card. So there you go. All right, so I see that we're up against the clock here. We have about 8 minutes for questions. I'm just going to leave this up here for a little bit. I do want to remind everyone that we are recording this webinar, and we will post all recorded webinars from the Career Day 2025 webinar series on our YouTube channel. So you don't have to, remember this long address. Just simply Google KPU CDC YouTube, and you'll see all of our recordings from this series. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the toolkit right here. I'm going to leave this up in case some of you would like to scan that QR code, and I'm going to open it up for questions. Jaden, did we have any questions that came through?
Yeah, we do have a couple. So the first one is it acceptable to have a preferred last name on a resume?
Yeah, absolutely you can. So the name you choose to put on your resume and cover letter does not have to be your legal name, whether it's your first name or your last name. The only thing I would consider is, does it match your LinkedIn, and make sure that, of course, if you put it on your resume, that you also put it on your cover letter. But yeah, you absolutely can. Again, you want to make sure when you get that job, and you're filling in all those tax forms and so forth, that you use whatever legal name you've been given. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have another question here. I heard it's important to use keywords because recruiters use ATS. How can I be sure that I use proper keywords that will be recognized by the system?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I want to just kind of preface it first with information about the ATS. So ATS is an applicant tracking system, and many companies use this as a way to collect and store resumes. That's what they do. They collect and they store. It's not a gatekeeper. It won't prevent your resume from making it through to the recruiter. It simply collects and it stores applications as they come through the system. The recruiter then might go through and view those resumes as they have come in, and they might have set certain requirements for their ATS to organize those applications that came in. So it might be by keyword, it might be by location, or whatever it might be. It might be like, okay, now I want you to just give me a list of resumes that contain these keywords, right? So they might have that. That's pretty sophisticated. That being said, keywords are important on your resume as long as they are the keywords that reflect the job posting, the job, and professional terminology. So I think if you're using a job posting as a guide, then chances are you're probably going to be doing a good job of kind of scattering those keywords throughout your application. Right. So use the job posting as your guide. Make sure that you're using industry specific terminology, and I think you should be fine.
Okay, so we have another one here. If I have multiple past work experiences, some being shorter, some being longer, should I include all of them on my resume?
Yeah, that's another good question. So when it comes to, typically speaking, I would say if you were at a position for fewer than 3 months, you could probably remove that, from your resume. Now, everyone's different, so it really does depend on what you did before and after that, of course. But if you had, if you remove those 3 month jobs, let's say, or less than 3 months, um, then and it doesn't actually result in any big date gaps. Like if you had three-month jobs in a row and you remove all of them, then that's leaving a pretty big date gap on your resume. Nowadays, employers don't really question gaps too much, right? There are plenty of reasons why someone might have a 6 month gap from one job to another. So, consider that when you're deciding if you want to take some jobs that don't seem as relevant on off your resume. One thing you can do, though, that might help you in deciding what to keep on your resume and what to take off is you can have two sections for your work experience. One section is relevant work experience, and you would list that relevant work experience, and the dates might not be the most current ones, but it shows that you have relevant work experience from, maybe a couple of years ago. And then you can have an other work experience section. So that other work experience section might contain the job title, the date, and the company name, but no descriptive bullets. But what you're showing the reader is that you were actively involved in the labor market during that time, but it's not particularly relevant for this position. And so you've put it perhaps lower at the bottom third of the page and just the logistical information, job title, company, and date. And you put more emphasis on the more relevant jobs that you've had or volunteer experience that you've had.
Okay, we have another question here. So when I'm quantifying my impact on my resume, is there a realistic way to calculate the percentage of my efficiency or other metrics? I was wondering if this is something that I could actually do.
Yeah, and so it can be a tough one. In many cases, you can estimate it for sure. You can estimate it, but you do what I would recommend you do because they might call you on it. So you do want to make sure that you were in communication, perhaps with a previous manager or supervisor from that role, or current manager or supervisor if you're still in there, and you can have that conversation with them. So I want to quantify this, my impact on my resume. Would it be fair to say this? Right? So just make sure that you're on the same page, especially if you're using those people as a potential reference.
Okay, so we have a couple more here. If I'm applying to two different positions at the same company, would it be fine for me to submit a different resume for each posting?
Yeah, typically they might have information on their website about that, but chances are they will want you to submit a resume for each different position because it might be two totally different recruiters that have those as part of their portfolios. So chances are, they might speak to each other and say, "Hey, you know what? I got an applicant, not the best for my position, but I know you're hiring for that. So maybe I can suggest them over to you." But chances are, if there's two different positions on a website, I would recommend you apply to both positions separately, probably under one account. That's how you'll have to do it. But yeah, two different positions for sure,
Okay, we have two
or two
quick
different
questions.
applications. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, we have two quick questions left.
Okay. Well, keep
So
it quick, and then because we
yeah.
want to wrap it up for 1 o'clock.
Is
Yeah.
it
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
double-sided? Oh, okay.
So yeah, as a current KPU student, would I include my education still on the resume?
That is such a good
Mhm.
question, and I'm so happy you actually asked that because I get so many resumes submitted to me without KPU information on it, and I know that they're a KPU student.
So I brought my
Um,
notes.
Hi, can I just make sure that you're muted?
Oh shit. No,
There you go.
Um, yeah, so absolutely. Please put your current, just like you would put your current job or volunteer, put your current program that you're, so basically you would have the name of the program, the date, so perhaps September 2023 to present, or present, however you want to do it, and then the name of the institution. You can also put what year you're in. In some cases, they require that you put that. If it's an internship or something like that, they want to see that you're maybe a little bit more advanced in your program. But absolutely, please do put your current KPU education on your resume.
Okay, and we got one last one here. So what are some strategies to use when a resume is too long or has too much information? Would a two-page resume deter potential recruiters?
Yeah, I don't think it would necessarily deter it if unless you didn't make the effort to customize it. So if you find that everything, and again, a lot of people at KPU have a whole history of work experience and they are, maybe in a post-bac program and they had a whole life of professional experience behind them. In that case, they might have a full two-page resume because everything they've done is particularly relevant. And that's okay. So my question to you is, did you customize it? Did you take the time to pick and choose what from your resume you are telling the recruiter for that particular role? If it takes 2 pages, perfect, right? But just remember the formatting needs to be clear, not, make sure you have like your margins are not super narrow. Um, you know, I've seen some really tight ones over 2 pages, and I don't know. For me, that might be a deterrent. For some recruiters, it really just depends. So you just want to do your due diligence and make sure that you have customized the resume. You've started it off with a strong profile introduction or a summary that tells me you're qualified and encourages me to read on. Then chances are you've done your job.
Okay, and this is gonna be the last question, guys, because we're going against the clock here. It's 1:02. So if I'm submitting a cover letter and a resume as one document, which one would come first?
Yeah, in that case, you would put the cover letter first. And then I would suggest that you name, and that's only if the application, if they list it in the application, please submit it as one document. In many cases, if you're working with an ATS, there's one section for the resume and one section for the cover letter. But if they request one document only, then make sure that that's reflected in the name of the file as well. So Chantal Rackley _ career coach _ application. And that tells the reader that chances are there's a cover letter and a resume combined, but I would put the cover letter first and then the resume. All
Okay,
right.
I think yeah, that'll be all the questions for now since it's 1:03.
All right. So that's it, everyone. We're finished resumes and cover letters. Please come back tomorrow for the Career Insights panel. You won't regret it. I would strongly recommend that you register for that on Career Connection right now. And hopefully we'll see you all there. I am definitely looking forward to observing that one. And hopefully we'll see you at the rest of the webinar series. And definitely, hopefully we'll see you at Career Day next week. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.